So our chat topic is safeguarding the data crown jewels. And essentially, I think the question is really about data security in the age of AI, right? What are the challenges that are emerging? What are the risks, and how do we approach them? Perhaps to start, Vesco, it would be good. Maybe you could tell us a bit about your role and background on this as a way of talking about how you've seen the security landscape changing with AI and what some of the emerging risks and challenges are.
Well, thank you. My name is Vesco. I've been at HP for only 3 months. I came from VMware and other cloud-native type of providers of infrastructure software. And I think I have the funnest job in AI now because I'm dealing with the AI use cases that I think really can make an impact. Healthcare, defense, policing, core banking, things like that are not available to ChatGPT or just hosted in the cloud, right? So that's kind of where I'm working at. Our division is called, the advertisement is called Private Cloud AI, if that makes sense.
And how are you, to this question of data security, then how are you seeing the risks changing in the landscape, right, as a result of AI? Maybe this audience well knows what those major risks are, but what are the kind of challenges that you think organizations are facing?
Well, I obviously have a lot of thoughts, but I can just reiterate what we hear mostly from customers, right? And that's, the first one is, of course, customers are afraid of data leaks. If you use RAG or, tune or train your model on your own customer data, eventually customers are afraid that it might be leaked, which makes perfect sense, and it's a good concern. The other one is that it will be trained on data that will make it create the wrong response. Out to the customer, might create something that just doesn't make sense. But if it's used for something more critical, like decision support for military or for a surgeon, then one is very concerned of the fact that the data needs to be consistent and precise. And I think that the third part is, customers are afraid of the Skynet Terminator coming, but we have seen cases where, simulations of where, an AI agent is given just one password and starts executing Terraform scripts and Kubernetes flows and opens up firewalls and eventually has taken over the entire IT landscape, right? So customers are afraid that AI might become a very dangerous hacker, right? So that's kind of 3 categories, I think.
Yeah, so there are interesting risks that emerge at that stage. So there might be around shadow AI use, poisoning models, agentic hackers, etc. But what are the risks that are, or are there risks emerging in the kind of encryption and data, the sort of data layer with AI workloads?
Yeah. Well, you said the word encryption there, and I think that and data protection. I'm trying to choose my word wisely here, but I don't think that's an issue anymore. I think it's 10, 15 years ago where we actually set the standard for what IT security is. I mean, mutual TLS and firewalls and role-based access and identity management. So encryption at rest, at flight. So I think if we treat AI as a workload in the enterprise, like we would treat our SAP or something else like that, then we have got the IT security part of AI covered. Zero trust was not just a buzzword; it's an actual initiative, so that one that avoids this taking over, right? I think you also said shadow AI. I mean, 10 years ago there was a buzzword called shadow IT. Do you remember that? Now there definitely is shadow AI, and I think all of us can probably nod that maybe we have asked ChatGPT a little question too much, or share. So, but the thing is, shadow AI is. We should not punish the people that do shadow IT, because they are your best employees. They are the ones who actually want to make a difference. They're willing to risk their job because their customer is important, their deadlines are important. They're actually willing to bend the rules of bureaucracy in order to get the job done, right? But of course, if you have a data scientist who is a PhD or a master and a bit of a prima donna because they're very sought after and very expensive, and they have to wait half a year to get a Jupyter notebook or to get a cluster going, they might be tempted to go elsewhere and find alternatives. So the main job of companies and governments is, of course, to provide them this this cloud experience as a service, so that they can actually use their own tools and not go go rogue, basically.
And even then, within the confines of a secure environment, a lot of the risk here seems to stem from having a multi-cloud environment, right, where you're operating a much more complex architecture. What are some of the risks that are emerging there, and how are cloud operators responding to that?
Yeah, well, like I mentioned, if you treat AI as another enterprise application, then we have the guardrails in place already. I mean, we're using Office 365, and many customers use SAP in the cloud, and so I don't think that's the main risk. I think the main risk is for AI, and this might sound like an advertisement for HPE, but own your AI, right? I mean, if it's running on somebody else's computer, you can't control it. And might not even be malignant or evil intentions from a cloud provider or another service provider, but they're patching their models 15 times a day, right? So how do we know that in one of these updates a bug didn't come in, right? So the only way to actually trust AI and is to actually own it yourself, I think, for real. But of course, there are multiple tools. We have tools like Data Fabric. There are cloud lakes, data lake houses that provide secure access and protocols. So I don't think we should be worried as long as we treat AI, like I said, as any other enterprise application.
There are, in all of the risk categories that you talked about, there are cyber risks that are emerging, and there are commercial risks associated with those. But another aspect of this is regulation and compliance and data residency and sovereignty laws, etc. How are cloud providers adapting to meet some of those needs?
Well, luckily for us, not fast enough. I mean, Microsoft is building 3 data centers in Norway, right? It's great, but they're still not sovereign cloud. They're still connected to Microsoft. I think, just as an example, they're of course a big partner of us, and not taking. But the fact that the White House just turned down the email of the International Court of Justice, that means that. If you can't control it, somebody can turn it off, right? So even though they are really establishing data centers locally, they're having edge devices, it's still not fast enough, and we're not pushing too far for it because that's kind of our business of providing private clouds.
I guess, are there, in any context, are there going to be trade-offs, though, that organizations are facing, the companies are facing, between a compliant and locked down system versus being able to innovate or achieve certain kind of performance?
Yeah, well, the performance part, I mean, when we talk, you heard about the rest of the sessions here, we're talking about huge scales and thousands of GPUs and tens of thousands. And, most customers are not at 100,000 GPUs. Most customers are at 8, right? That's enough sufficient to support most AI use cases. And those AI use cases are in the hospital, right? Or in the police department, where they're, the whole thing about huge factories of AI being available as this big centralized computer is not necessarily the case. The best need for AI is in the factories, in the manufacturing, in the oil rigs. It's places where you cannot have access to internet. These are, per definition, air-gapped environments. So, what we need to do is make sure that we can provide them the cloud-like model of self-service and everything that they're used to as like I said, the data scientist wants to have their own Jupyter notebook. Click, click, next, finish. There you go, right? Don't wait half a year to get a cluster. So yeah.
When you're thinking about some of these more far-off risks, I think you were mentioning the sort of sexier ones around agentic AI, etc., agent hackers. What does that vision look like, and what can we do about that?
Well, I gotta go back to this again. Treat it like a application and a workload, and treat it like a person, right? If you let a person in and give them the key to your house, you better trust them very well, and therefore we have zero trust. Basically, they might open one door, next door is a different key, right? So let's just keep it like that. And I think there's a couple of other guardrails that we need to think about. That one, use open source. By the time you want to check out a llama model or something, there's 20,000 other people that have already inspected it, right? So you can, kind of more or less trust that what you're running your AI on is been verified by a large community. I also like to say, don't reinvent the wheel with AI, right? Don't use the tools that are available by the community. And like I said, it's been open source. So for instance, don't do it manually. Use Apache Airflow. That's kind of one of the services that we provide in our to get the data pipelines. And then if you have confidential data, GDPR sensitive data that you are afraid to put in your AI model, well, use the tools that already have existed for 20 years to anonymize the data, right? Apache Spark, for instance, right? You say, okay, now we're going to anonymize, or we're going to remove IP addresses or names of customers, etc. These things are available, and they're kind of available for free and out of the box, right? So sometimes one is tempted, where do we start? And how many consultants hours do we have to pay? And when actually this has been done before, and it's verified, and it's trusted. So I think it's easier than many fear. That's one of the advices. But when it comes to data, which kind of is back in where we're talking about, well, make sure that you first of all use the guardrails that are available from the vendor. So we're talking a lot about NVIDIA hardware and partly about NVIDIA software. Part of the NVIDIA solution is guardrails. The fact that an inferencing service cannot use certain tables of a query, right? That's just out of the box. They made it for us, right? When it comes to feeding it data, well, like I mentioned, we have many tools to query structured and unstructured data, streaming data from Kafka, etc., etc. So to treat it like an enterprise, treat it like it was your ERP system, and then you will, well, the result you will get will be best effort, but it will still be based on your data, not the internet, right? Yeah.
Lunch is beckoning us soon, but I don't know if anybody has any questions for Vesco. Want to raise their hand? We can bring a microphone.
Who wants to be between lunch and us?
Yes, it's a tough gig. Well, just any final pieces of advice that you'd give?
I think, well, I want to say it again. The biggest question is for many customers of where to get started with the AI is, well, how do we bring the group of people together to do a work? So there could be a project manager, a data scientist, a developer, and then somebody from IT operations and somebody from compliance or something, right? Very often they don't know each other, right? Very often we have meetings with them, and it's the first time they get into a room together, right? So it's not a bad thing inside your organization to raise your hand. Hey, who's got an AI use case? Okay, let's talk, right? What are your challenges? People, especially in larger organizations, they have 30, 40 AI use cases lined up and ready, and they don't know where to start, who to speak to, but they're kind of hesitant to speak to their colleague. So start there, I think, and of course, speak to us as well. We might contribute with something too. But
okay, well, thank you very much, Vesco. And I think if there are any questions, there's a HPE stand over in the lobby. Okay, so thanks very much.
Thank you.